Escambia County's mobile home parks are quiet, humble places, where neighbors rely on one another for support and companionship. But within these close-knit communities, tensions often simmer beneath the surface. For Audreanna Zimmerman, this world was both her sanctuary and the stage for a betrayal that would change her life forever. Audreanna was known for her resilience. As a single mother, she faced the struggles of poverty with determination, hoping to build a better life for her child. She lived modestly in a weathered trailer, balancing the demands of motherhood with the harsh realities of her circumstances. Just a few doors down lived Tina Brown, a woman hardened by years of abuse and neglect. Tina's childhood had been a relentless cycle of trauma, shaping her into someone who viewed the world through a lens of mistrust and anger. Despite her rough exterior, she had a way of drawing people into her orbit, including Audreanna. Tina, Heather Lee, and Audreanna formed an unlikely friendship, a bond forged by shared struggles and the isolation of their environment. But what began as camaraderie soon gave way to friction, as mistrust and petty grievances took root. Tina Brown's childhood was a tapestry woven with neglect and abuse. Born into a household teetering on the edge of dysfunction, Tina's earliest memories were shaped by instability and fear. In a home devoid of warmth or safety, she learned that vulnerability invited pain and trust was a liability. As a child, Tina sought solace in fleeting friendships and moments of escapism. But the world outside her home offered little reprieve. In a community stretched thin by poverty, resources were scarce, and cries for help often went unanswered. The systems designed to protect children like Tina were overwhelmed, leaving her to navigate her pain alone. By her teenage years, Tina was already acquainted with the legal system, not as a participant in justice, but as a survivor of violence. Each encounter with authority reinforced a sense of invisibility, her suffering acknowledged but never truly addressed. The scars of Tina's childhood bled into her adult life. Relationships were tumultuous, marked by a desperate search for validation and control. These patterns, rooted in years of unhealed trauma, set the stage for the storm to come. Just a few miles away, Audreanna Zimmerman faced her own struggles. As a young mother, Audreanna juggled the responsibilities of raising her daughter with the relentless challenges of poverty. Her days were spent tending to her child, navigating the labyrinth of public assistance, and clinging to the hope of a brighter future. The mobile home park was more than just a place to live, it was a community bound by shared hardships. Here, neighbors leaned on one another for support, but tensions simmered beneath the surface. Financial instability, unspoken grudges, and the pressures of survival created an environment fraught with unease. When Tina and Audreanna's paths crossed, they formed a bond born out of mutual struggle. Yet, their connection was fragile, easily frayed by misunderstandings and mistrust. The closeness that initially brought comfort would soon turn into a weapon of betrayal. For Tina, the park was both a refuge and a reminder of her limitations. Surrounded by reminders of her own unfulfilled dreams, she became increasingly embittered. The frustrations of her life, compounded by her unresolved past, festered like an open wound. Audreanna, on the other hand, focused on providing for her daughter. She endured the whispers and judgments of her neighbors, her resolve unwavering. Yet, even her resilience was tested by the undercurrents of tension that rippled through the park. In Tina's mind, the hardships she faced were magnified by perceived slights and betrayals. Each interaction, no matter how trivial, fed into her growing resentment. She saw enemies where there were none, and her anger sought an outlet. The fragile peace between Tina and Audreanna would not last. Their shared history of struggle, rather than uniting them, became a battleground of mistrust. The seeds of discord had been sown, and the storm was inevitable. As the days turned into weeks, the tension between Tina and Audreanna escalated. What began as minor disputes over money and misunderstandings grew into open hostility. For Tina, every argument was another spark in an already volatile situation. Fueled by her anger and past traumas, Tina acquired a stun gun ostensibly for protection but ultimately a tool of her darkest intentions. Her mind, clouded by resentment and pain, began to shape a plan that would bring her to the edge of human morality. Within the walls of their humble trailers, the lives of Tina and Audreanna moved inexorably toward a collision. Their shared struggles, rather than bridging the gap between them, became the catalyst for a tragedy that would shake the community to its core. Life at the mobile home park had its own rhythm. For all its hardships, there was a sense of community, a fragile bond formed out of shared struggles. At the heart of this web of relationships were Tina Brown, Heather Lee, and Audreanna Zimmerman. Their friendship, while seemingly supportive, was built on shaky foundations. While they laughed together, small grievances began to accumulate. Tina, always watchful and quick to judge, often perceived slights where there were none. Her insecurities, fueled by years of trauma and hardship, began to distort her view of those around her. Their relationship began to fracture over financial disputes, loans that went unpaid, borrowed items that were never returned. Tina, already burdened by her own financial woes, felt betrayed by Audreanna's perceived carelessness. What might have been a minor disagreement between friends soon escalated into a full-blown conflict. Tina's resentment grew as she convinced herself that she was being excluded and ridiculed. In her mind, Heather and Audreanna were conspiring against her, their camaraderie a direct affront to her fragile sense of control. Amidst this growing tension, Tina acquired a stun gun, a decision that marked the turning point in her unraveling. Officially, it was for protection. But to those who knew her, it was clear that Tina's motives went far deeper. The stun gun became a physical manifestation of her paranoia and anger, a tool that she believed would restore her dominance. The acquisition of the stun gun emboldened Tina. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. To her, it was a way to level the playing field, a means to reclaim the power she felt had been stripped from her by years of betrayal and hardship. Tina's growing isolation only intensified her feelings of resentment. Every whispered conversation, every shared glance between Heather and Audreanna, became evidence of a conspiracy in her mind. The once close friends were now adversaries in a battle only Tina seemed to be fighting. The final straw came when accusations of theft began to surface. Heather claimed that Tina had stolen from her, while Tina accused Audreanna of spreading lies. The accusations flew back and forth, each one adding fuel to the fire. The fragile relationships between the three women shattered completely. From that point on, there was no turning back. Tina retreated further into her own world, her thoughts consumed by anger and betrayal. The stage was set for the conflict to explode into violence. In the weeks that followed, Tina's thoughts turned darker. The injustices she believed she had suffered took on a life of their own in her mind, growing larger and more insurmountable with each passing day. She began to plan, driven by a need to reclaim her sense of control at any cost. To Tina, the sight of Heather and Audreanna together was unbearable. Their happiness was a cruel reminder of her own isolation, their laughter a mockery of her pain. In her mind, they were the enemy, and she was determined to make them pay. The tension in the park was palpable. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones, sensing that something was amiss. But no one could have predicted the storm that was about to break. For Tina, there was no turning back. Her fractured relationships, her feelings of betrayal, and her unhealed wounds had all led to this moment. What had once been a quiet mobile home park was about to become the scene of an unthinkable crime. Behind closed doors, the lives of Tina, Heather, and Audreanna had reached a boiling point. The fractures in their relationships, fueled by distrust and desperation, had set the stage for a tragedy that would leave the community forever changed. It was supposed to be a night of resolutions, or so Audreanna believed. Under the pretense of clearing the air and mending their fractured relationship, Tina, Heather, and Brittany convinced her to join them in the car. The tension inside the vehicle was thick, unspoken words lingering in the cold silence, as the dark road stretched endlessly ahead. Audreanna had no idea that her trust in these women would soon lead to unimaginable betrayal. While the car moved further away from the familiarity of the mobile home park, her unease grew. She noticed the sidelong glances between Tina and Heather, the way their words seemed heavier than usual. But before she could act on her instincts, the night turned to chaos. Without warning, the car pulled over to an isolated stretch of road, far from any prying eyes. What happened next unfolded with horrifying speed. Tina turned to Audreanna, her face twisted with a blend of rage and resentment. In her hand, she clutched the stun gun, a weapon she had been waiting to use. The ambush was sudden and merciless. Tina struck first, discharging the stun gun against Audreanna's side. The pain was instant, paralyzing her with its intensity. Tina's fury seemed to overflow, each jolt of the stun gun a violent outburst of years of pent-up anger. Despite their initial hesitation, Heather and Brittany joined in. Heather, driven by her own insecurities and fear of Tina, lashed out in an attempt to solidify her place in Tina's fractured world. Brittany, only 16, was caught in a web of manipulation and loyalty, her youth making her susceptible to Tina's overpowering influence. The violence escalated with terrifying speed. In the confines of the car, the attack became a frenzied blur of strikes and cries. Tina, Heather, and Brittany unleashed their fury with chilling determination, their actions fueled by a toxic combination of hatred, fear, and a need for control. Despite the brutal assault, Audreanna's will to survive proved unbreakable. Summoning every ounce of strength, she managed to escape the vehicle. Her vision blurred, her body trembling from shock and pain, but she refused to give in. She knew that if she stayed, she wouldn't survive. Her escape was nothing short of miraculous. Wounded, disoriented, and alone in the dark, Audreanna fought through the pain. Each step was a testament to her resilience, her determination to live overpowering the physical agony that threatened to consume her. As Audreanna disappeared into the night, Tina's confidence began to crack. Her plans, meticulously crafted in her mind, were unraveling before her eyes. She had underestimated the strength of her victim, a mistake that would soon lead to her downfall. Audreanna's journey to safety ended at the door of a stranger's home. Her bloodied appearance and desperate pleas for help left no room for hesitation. The authorities were called, and her attackers' identities were revealed, a pivotal moment that set the wheels of justice in motion. The crime scene painted a grim picture of the violence that had taken place. Bloodstains inside the car, marks from the stun gun, and the accounts of a severely injured but surviving victim provided investigators with a clear path forward. Though her injuries were severe, Audreanna's spirit remained unbroken. She provided a detailed account of the attack, naming Tina, Heather, and Brittany as her assailants. Her bravery in recounting the events, despite the trauma she endured, became the cornerstone of the case against them. For Tina, Heather, and Brittany, the illusion of control was shattered. Their actions, driven by hatred and desperation, had not only failed to silence Audreanna but had ensured their own downfall. The small mobile home park that had been their world was now the epicenter of a shocking crime that would captivate the nation. The events of that night left scars that would never fully heal. For Audreanna, the physical and emotional toll was immense, but her survival was a testament to the strength of the human spirit. For Tina, Heather, and Brittany, their choices led them down a path of no return, their lives forever altered by the consequences of their actions. The aftermath of the attack revealed a grisly tableau. Detectives, armed with forensic expertise and fueled by a determination for justice, combed through the evidence left behind. The car, an unwitting accomplice in the crime, held secrets that would solidify the case against Tina, Heather, and Brittany. Every detail told a story. The bloodied clothing bore silent witness to the violence inflicted upon Audreanna. The stun gun, its charge spent, symbolized the calculated cruelty of the attack. Footprints scattered in frantic directions hinted at the chaos of the night, while DNA traces on the interior of the car tied the perpetrators irrevocably to their heinous act. The arrests came swiftly. Detectives, armed with Audreanna's testimony and the damning physical evidence, confronted Tina, Heather, and Brittany. The trio's initial defiance soon crumbled under the weight of incontrovertible proof. Each of them offered fragmented justifications, their stories riddled with inconsistencies. Audreanna's courage became the linchpin of the case. Despite her trauma, she recounted the events of that harrowing night with unwavering clarity, her words painting a vivid picture of the assault. Her identification of her attackers left no room for doubt, sealing their fates. The trial began with a media frenzy, the shocking brutality of the crime drawing national attention. Each defendant presented a version of events shaped by self-preservation, but the evidence painted a far more damning picture. Tina Brown, the mastermind behind the attack, displayed little remorse. Her defense painted her as a product of her environment, a woman shaped by years of abuse and neglect. But the jury saw through the facade. Her actions, premeditated and merciless, left no room for leniency. Heather Lee, caught between loyalty to Tina and her own survival instincts, attempted to distance herself from the crime. Her tears and pleas for understanding fell flat against the overwhelming evidence of her active participation. Heather's role as an enabler and accomplice could not be ignored. Brittany, only 16 at the time of the crime, became the most controversial figure in the trial. Her youth and manipulation by Tina painted her as both a victim and a perpetrator. Yet her actions joining in the attack without hesitation made it impossible to overlook her culpability. The deliberations were tense. The jurors wrestled with the weight of their decisions, balancing the defendants' personal histories with the horrifying reality of their crime. Justice, they knew, had to reflect the gravity of the act. The verdicts were unanimous. Tina Brown, the ringleader, was sentenced to death, a decision reflecting the premeditated brutality of her actions. Heather Lee and Brittany received life sentences, their involvement too severe for leniency. For Audreanna, the sentences brought a measure of closure, a reminder that justice, though imperfect, could prevail. For Tina, Heather, and Brittany, the weight of their actions would follow them for the rest of their lives. The case of Audreanna Zimmerman stands as a chilling reminder of how far desperation and anger can drive individuals. It is a story of survival, justice, and the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable cruelty. The tragedy that unfolded in March 2010 is not just the story of individuals, but a reflection of systemic issues that permeate communities like this one. Poverty, a lack of mental health resources, and generational trauma create fertile ground for violence. These factors, intertwined with personal struggles, culminated in a crime that shocked a nation. While stories like Audreanna's can highlight the darkness in humanity, they also shine a light on the efforts to prevent such tragedies. Across the country, programs that address the root causes of violence are working to mend the fractures in at-risk communities. Audreanna Zimmerman's journey reminds us of the strength that lies within even the most battered hearts. Her resilience is a powerful reminder that survival is possible, even in the face of unimaginable cruelty. Her story is not just about suffering but about hope and the possibility of a better tomorrow. Through her recovery, Audreanna has become a voice for change, advocating for those who often go unheard. Her story is a reminder of the importance of fostering resilience, accountability, and community support in preventing future tragedies. It's through unity, education, and proactive action that communities can begin to heal. Stories like Audreanna's are not just cautionary tales, they are calls to action, urging us to address the systemic issues that breed such violence. Thank you for watching and helping us keep these stories alive. If this video resonated with you, please consider liking and sharing it with others. By spreading awareness, we can honor the strength of survivors like Audreanna and inspire change in our communities. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that matter. Together, we can make a difference.